I was able to take my income from about $42,000 a year to over $200,000 a year in about 5 years. And in today's video, I'm gonna share with you the 3 main tips that led me to increase my income so significantly in such a short period of time. And if you stick around till the end, I'll share with you one extra bonus tip that will help literally everyone. Hi, I'm Chloe Daniels, also known as Chloe Bear Money Coach on the internet, and this is my channel where we talk about all things money. Now, income is a really big part of money, of making money, of being able to save it, of being able to invest in all of those things. So in this video, I want to go through kind of my income journey and what I did to increase my income in such a short period of time. In my 9-to-5 alone, not even counting my business, I was able to increase my income by about $100,000 in just 5 years. So the tips we'll be discussing today are really going to mostly be related to how I increased my income at my 9-to-5, but if you stick around till the end, I'll also share with you how I was able to increase my income that doesn't apply to my 9-to-5. All right, so my first big tip is that make sure that if you are looking for a job that allows you to grow, you make that very clear when you're in the interview process. Here's why. When I was looking for a position, I was really looking for a position that gave me access to a lot of different things that the company did, because I didn't really know how my teaching skills were going to translate in the workforce. Because of that, when I was on the hunt, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to pick a really specialized position, because I knew I didn't know what I wanted to specialize in. So the last thing I wanted to do was pigeonhole myself into something like an administrative assistant or into like one very tiny role like a copywriter or something along those lines, where it was like I was gonna do one thing and one thing only. I wanted the opposite. Now the key thing to keep in mind here is that I made that very clear in the interview process. That was obviously part of my search, as I made sure that I was searching for jobs that had the opportunity to work across a lot of different departments, but I also made it really clear in my interview that I didn't want to be a development assistant forever. So when they asked me, hey, what about this role makes you interested? Like, why do you want to work here? And I said, you know, I like, just based off of this job description and based off of the conversations that I've been having with all of you, is it has exposure to so many different things. So not only would I be working with the programs committee, I'd also be working with volunteers, I'd also be working with the fundraisers, I'd also be working with communications, and I love that because I don't really know what I'm going to want to continue to pursue, but I know I want to learn, I know I want exposure, and I want to eventually specialize in one of those things. And the fact that this role gives me exposure to all of those things is exactly what I'm looking for. And that's the thing I really want to point out, is I was making these things clear from the interview process. And there's a reason that that's so important. It's not only important for me to make those things clear for my employer, but it's also really important for me to see how my future employer is going to react to the fact that I want to grow. I want to take a position that allows growth. Because the thing is, if you end up taking a position at a company and you didn't make it clear that you're trying to grow, what happens if the attitude at the company is not about growth? They're not interested in promoting internally. They're not really trying to give you exposure. If that's the culture of the environment that you're going into, well, you need to know that in the interview process so that you can make an informed decision before you take on that position. If growth is important to you, you want to be working at a company that values growth, that values their employees and values promoting within. And so in that process, you've probably heard before, like, you are not just the one being interviewed in these jobs, you should also be interviewing these companies that are hiring you, and you should also be interviewing your future boss. So on TikTok and on Instagram, when I've posted about my journey before, folks have always said, wow, you got so lucky by being at a company and having a boss that wants to promote you. But the thing is, that was by design. From day one in my conversations with these people, I made sure that the boss was going to be an advocate for me, that my future company was going to be really valuing career growth. Because again, you want to know these things in order for you to make an informed decision yourself. And because I made that really clear, this leads us perfectly into tip number 2. When I actually got the job, my growth was a constant topic of conversation with my boss. So the company that I was working at had a system that really focused on having a lot of one-on-ones with your supervisor and your team every single week. And my boss at the time, we originally started those one-on-one conversations with just like, here's my to-do list, like what do I need to focus on? And that was definitely a component of it, but I also made sure that in those conversations, I checked in with how I was doing in terms of progressing towards my next promotion, because I did not want to stay as a development assistant for more than a year. What's so important about this is so many people wait until their annual review to bring up the fact that they want to have a promotion. And it's like, at that point, most of the budgets have already been designed. They've already been planned out. So you asking in the 11th hour really doesn't put you in a position for success. Instead, if you're able to keep the conversation going all year round and also have check-ins and goals to help get you to a place where you now have all of this data collected about your performance and overperforming and killing these projects and things like that, that's gonna make the promotion conversation a whole lot easier than just like kind of hoping that when the annual review comes around, your boss is gonna be like, you know what, I think we should promote you. Like realistically, that's not going to happen. That's not really how the corporate workplace works. You have to be having these conversations all year long so that when it comes to that actual final conversation, that annual review or the conversation about your potential promotion, that's like the easy shoe-in win. You've been building your case for over a year or at least a year with all the data on how you've performed, as well as all the things, the extra tasks and things that you've taken on, as well as all the goals that you and your boss set up together so that you can show like, hey, I've been doing all these things that we have talked about. This is the goal that we set for myself. Here's another one. Here's all the things that I have done that have helped me achieve this goal. And like, now is the conversation to talk about this promotion. You're not taking your boss by surprise. They've probably taken this into consideration when working on the budget, assuming they're a VP. So it's a much easier yes than like waiting for a year, showing up in your annual conversation and just being like, hi, can you promote me? That would be great. Like, that's just not gonna happen, or at least it's less likely to happen than it would if you're having these conversations all year long. And I did that at every single job I had, but I put that plan together with my boss. So it's like, okay, what does success mean to you in order for me to become a director? Or what does success mean to you in order for me to become a senior manager? And kind of working backwards from like, okay, this is what I wanna do. What do I need to do in order to get this position? And then having those check-ins throughout the year. Now, some of you may be wondering like, well, my company doesn't have like an annual review process. They don't have these things already set in place. And what I would encourage you to do is to start that process yourself. Talk to your boss and say, hey, I really want to have the opportunity to grow at this company, and because of that, I would really like to set up time, quarterly to check in on my goals and to check in on my growth. Take initiative and do it yourself, because if that's like, just imagine an employee coming to you and saying like, hey, I want to grow, and here's an idea for how you and I can work together to make sure that both of our goals are being met and I'm able to, continue to grow at this company. As a manager, I'd be so stoked. I'd be like, heck yes, get it, take that initiative. And like, it shows so much that you're like, maybe there's not a system in place here, but I'm gonna put a system in place here. Even if it's not a system-wide, if it's just for me, I'm going to take that initiative to get what I need in order to get the promotion, get the growth that I need to see. So don't be afraid to do that. Third step in how I was able to get promoted pretty quickly is because not only of those conversations that I was having throughout the year, but also the extra work I was willing to take on. So in my role at the nonprofit, I became known as like the go-to girl for getting things done. So my boss knew that if there was a project that needed to get done and needed to happen, he could give it to me and I would get it done with little to no knowledge. There were times in my career where he would just give me this huge, like multi-six-figure project where I was like, I'm gonna need some more information. He's like, you'll figure it out. And I'd get frustrated, but I knew he knew the fact that I wanted to grow out this company. And so these projects were opportunities to show the fact that I'm already doing the work and I'm already showing this leadership role, or I'm already showing the fact that I can do it even if I don't have that role yet. Now I know that like starting to do the work before you're getting paid to the work can be a huge turnoff for a lot of people. But the reality of corporate America and even nonprofit America is that a lot of the times to be promoted internally, you got to start doing the work work first for like 6 months to a year before that promotion happens. Now, hopefully it's not more than 6 months. If it's more than 6 months, then that's definitely going to be a cultural issue. Most of my promotions happened within 6 months of me starting that work, but something to keep in mind is that, yeah, it sucks that you have to do the work unpaid. Sometimes they'll give you a back pay bonus in a negotiation, which is really nice, but generally you have to prove the fact that you are able to do this work. My boss at the nonprofit company, he was great at always giving me projects that I felt like I wasn't ready for, but he would push me and he'd be like, I know you can do this, go do it. And then I would do it and I would kill it. And so every single time that happened where he would give me something that I didn't think I was ready for, I would nail it and then I would track it, because tracking it is so important so that you can come to those conversations with actual data. Because yeah, it's pretty easy to go into a conversation and say, you should promote me because I'm awesome, but that's not realistic. Like, they're not gonna promote us just because we're awesome. You need to have actual data on all the things you did. So anytime I was able to raise X amount of dollars or do better than the person who had been managing it before by X amount of dollars or whatever it was, I would keep track of everything. Every job that I had that was out of my scope, every project that I had that was with another team, every new thing that I took on, I kept track of it. I literally, there's not like even a sophisticated way that I did it. I literally just had like a Google sheet where I would keep track of all of my projects and I would talk about the numbers for each and every single one of those things. Now, before we get to the bonus tip, I do actually have one more tip on how I was able to increase my income so significantly at my 9-to-5, and that's asking my mentors how much I should be asking for. Now, I had really great relationships at both of the companies that I worked for, by design, of course. I'm just a really lovely person who people really like working with. But because I had built really good relationships with my bosses, they kind of became my mentor. And so because of that, at my nonprofit job, whenever I'd be up for the promotion or the next position, I actually had the opportunity to write my own job description. But when it comes to writing your own job description, you also have to figure out, what do you think that this is gonna be paid? Like, what is the pay for this position? And so one of the biggest helps for me was just having conversations with other people at my organization to figure out what their pay ranges are. Now, I get that that can be uncomfortable, and that's why relationships are so important, because for me, it was not uncomfortable because I had already built these really fantastic relationships, and like, people liked talking about that once we were able to kind of like lift the veil. But getting a really clear idea of what other people are getting paid, and also understanding like what this role entails, as well as of course seeing like the competitive data for the area at the time, the Chicago data for a similar role, was really helpful. But what I found is when I started like asking my bosses, asking my mentor, like, what is something that I should ask for in this role? Because obviously my boss was not responsible for like approving my salary. It was at a much higher level. So he'd have that honest conversation with me, like, I think you should ask for this, or I think you should ask for that. And it was almost always more money than I was going to ask for. So it was really, really important for me to have those conversations, because had I not had those conversations, I would have asked for less, I would have gotten less, and then that would have impacted all of my roles here on out, and all of my pays here on out, because every time I got a 10% promotion, it would be based off of that lower number rather than off the higher number that I got from my boss in the first place. One of the biggest things that we can do, especially as women, is talk about our salaries and talk about what we're getting paid, so that people who are getting underpaid start to recognize it and start to realize, like, whoa, I need to be asking for more money. I remember specifically when I was leaving my nonprofit job and going into my consulting job, I had a conversation with my upcoming boss, and I was like, you know, what do you think I should be asking for in this role? And she was like, you know, you may be asking for at least 95. And I remember just like my mind being completely blown, because I was making in the 60s at the time. And when I was talking her through it, she's like, there's literally no reason you wouldn't get paid around that amount. Like, you are, this is what the role dictates. And so it doesn't matter what you're getting paid at your current position. What matters is the skills and expertise that you bring to the table. And of course, an extra bonus tip that I want to include is, it really helps in the negotiation process if you don't want the job desperately. So for example, when I went from the nonprofit to the private corporation where we were doing consulting, I didn't really want the position. I thought it sounded a lot more boring. There wasn't travel like there was at my nonprofit job. There's just a lot of things that I was like, I don't know how much I really care about this position. So when they offered it to me, it was so easy for me to ask for more money. To this day, I remember the conversation that I had with the hiring manager, and they called and they offered me $85,000 for the job. And I was like, wow, thanks. I really appreciate the offer. But I'm not going to be able to take this until I have a $95,000 offer. And they did then end up bump me up to $91,000. Like they called 10 minutes later with a better offer, and they allowed me to sit on it for a week. But the reason is I think I felt so confident in those conversations because I knew I was gonna do really good at this job. I just wasn't sure if I wanted it. I of course ended up taking it, and then, very quickly in the 2.5, 3 years that I was there, I took that income from $91,000 to over $130,000. But it all started with that initial conversation, and all of my raises, again, were based off of that adjusted salary. You are the prize. You are the one that they're going to be, benefiting from. You're the trophy. It makes the conversations a lot easier, and you're able to take on that extra level of confidence. So at least that's what's helped me out a lot. So throughout this journey, from the time I was making $42,000 to the time I was making over $200,000, I always had a side hustle, and eventually I had a full-blown business. But for example, when I was making $42,000 a year in Chicago, I was still working for the company that I worked for in China doing their social media management. That allowed me to save and invest a little bit more, although to be fair, in my early 20s, all it allowed me to do was more travel and drinking $13 cocktails. But because I was able to do these side hustles, whether it was social media management, Ubering, or helping somebody build a website, or blogging, or whatever it was, I was able to have extra cash to throw away into my investments or put down on debt. But the absolute biggest game changer for me was starting my business in 2021. So Chloe Bear Money Coach is obviously now my full-time job, where I teach people how to invest every single week by creating content on the internet, but also by teaching folks through the Lazy Investors course, which shout out to that. If you want to come to my free class that's coming up soon, go check out the links down below. But anyway, when I had some expertise in terms of finance and things like that, I started financial coaching. And then once I quit my job in October, that allowed me to make an extra $90,000 last year, which led my income to be well above $200,000 last year, which is more money than I ever thought I would make. I had an English degree and a Spanish degree. I thought at most I would maybe make like $50,000 a year. And so the fact that last year I closed in on $200,000, and then this year I'm also looking at closing in more than $200,000 is just completely bonkers to me. But obviously the path, it took a lot of work. It took a lot of me, taking on extra work, taking on extra projects, being the person who was like the go-to person for getting things done. But now I'm able to own my own business and just kind of chill. Okay, chill is probably not the right word, but working really hard still. But anyway, those are the major things that I did to increase my income. And like I said, I never thought I would be a person who was making this kind of money. And I feel really blessed to be in a position that I am. But if you're able to leverage your expertise, whatever that expertise may be, it could be making soap, it could be money management, it could be dance, it could be so many things. Coaching and then course creation is some of the most lucrative stuff I have seen. It's truly mind-blowing and mind-boggling to me. But anyway, I hope this helped. If you have more questions about my course, about my business, about, even the 9 to 5 stuff, be sure to ask those questions down below. But you know the drill. If you've made it this far, be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And if you learned something, let me know what you learned down in the comments. And of course, you've got my social media handles here as well. I post there daily. But thanks so much for being here, and I hope you guys learned something new. So I'll see you guys next week.